There comes a moment where silence becomes your loudest expression, not because you're void of things to say, but because you've finally realized you don't need to prove your value through performance. You don't need to plead your worth into recognition. You don't need to collapse your dignity into someone else's disinterest just to feel seen. There is a quiet kind of power in detaching, not from your emotions, but from the need to have them validated by anyone else. Detachment is not cruelty, it's clarity. It's the conscious decision to stop participating in patterns that leave you emotionally bankrupt. It's when you no longer hand over the keys to your peace every time someone forgets how to hold you with care. It's when you stop trying to extract certainty from inconsistency. It's when you refuse to keep watering a space that only grows weeds, not roots. But detachment isn't disappearance. It doesn't mean you ghost your life or shut down your heart. No, real detachment is far more graceful than that. It is poised. It is composed. It is the quiet confidence of being present. Not to chase, not to fix, but to witness with open eyes and a closed gate. It's watching everything unfold and having the self-trust to not interrupt it just because the outcome isn't arriving on your preferred schedule. Staying gracefully present while emotionally detached is an art form. It means you don't lose yourself in the volatility of someone else's indecision. It means you still show up with integrity, but you no longer offer your soul as a sacrifice on the altar of their approval. It means your silence isn't an exit, it's a message. And the message is simple. I refuse to be at war with myself just to keep a connection alive. There is a sacred power in staying, not to stay attached, but to stay aware. You can be physically near and spiritually untethered. You can love from a distance even when you're standing right beside someone. You can remain composed even when your emotions want to erupt. That's not repression, that's self-leadership, and it is the highest form in emotional intelligence. People think strength is found in confrontation. Sometimes it's in the pause. Sometimes it's in holding your ground so firmly that your silence does what your words never could. Sometimes it's in watching patterns you used to jump to, correct, and simply not responding. Because when you no longer seek to fix or fight, you begin to see. You begin to observe who shows up when you stop overextending. You see who notices when your energy is no longer filling every gap. You learn who listens when you're no longer speaking. But most importantly, you discover who you become when you stop begging for emotional scraps. You find that you are far more resilient than you believed, that your value is not tethered to your ability to be available, to be agreeable, to be convenient. You learn that presence doesn't require you to bleed. You can be present and still guarded. You can be kind without being compliant. You can be soft without being submissive. And once you taste that level of self-containment, you will never again sell your peace for proximity. To detach emotionally doesn't mean you feel nothing. It means your feelings no longer dictate your worth. It means you can feel the ache of absence and not run toward chaos just to soothe it. It means you can acknowledge your longing without letting it lead you into another performance of desperation. It means you can sit with your sadness and not let it turn into a plea. There is a subtle revolution that happens when you stop demanding closure and start choosing composure. When you stop dissecting silence and start embracing it as your ally. When you stop asking what went wrong and start asking why you stayed so long, trying to make it right. That's when you take your power back, not in the storm, but in the stillness that follows when you stop contributing to it. Staying gracefully present is not for the faint of heart. It means you will sit in rooms where you used to dance, and you won't beg for the music to play again. It means you will walk through conversations that used to make your heart race and realize you don't need to hold every word like it's a lifeline. It means you will learn to look into eyes that once had your entire heart and not shrink into who you had to be to stay loved there. Because love that costs you your identity isn't love. It's a transaction. And once you stop showing up as a negotiator of your own value, you realize how many of your past moments were built on performance, not truth. You realize that you were never too much. You were simply too awake for people still living half asleep. So you stop shouting. You stop explaining. You stop presenting your pain like it needs permission to exist. You let people misunderstand you if they must. You let the silence stretch if it must, because you know who you are, and that knowing is louder than any validation you could receive. Here's what happens when you emotionally detach and stay gracefully present. The energy shifts. You're no longer vibrating at the frequency of fear. You're no longer grasping. You're no longer trying to outrun your own loneliness with noise. Instead, you anchor. You become rooted. You stop reaching and start radiating. And people feel that. They feel when you've stopped handing out free access to your attention. They feel when your warmth is no longer automatic. They feel when your focus retreats, not as revenge, but as a reminder. Your presence was never a given. It was a gift. And those who were once indifferent to your overgiving will either recalibrate or reveal their true nature. Either way, you win. Because when you stop throwing lifelines to those who never intended to swim toward you, you realize how light it feels to stop carrying what was never yours to hold. Staying gracefully present teaches you the art of emotional poise. You can be fully in a room and completely unhooked from the need to belong there. You can hear someone speak and not internalize every syllable as a reflection of your worth. You can feel love and not chase it. You can grieve without clinging. You can want without warping. And in this space, you learn one of life's most powerful lessons. The person who holds the most peace in any room holds the most power. Not because they dominate, but because they don't need to. They don't need to manipulate, to correct, to explain, to convince. They are content with observing. They are content with letting things unfold. Because they know this truth. What is meant to be in your life will never require you to betray yourself to keep it. You don't need to block. You don't need to beg. You don't need to broadcast your pain in hopes that someone will finally hear the ache beneath your silence. You simply shift. You turn inward. You breathe through the discomfort. You become a space so anchored in self-trust that chaos cannot find a way in. This is where the power lies in physical movement. So you can be seen to it, what some savers wish backwards for, some touch but cannot feel. These are completely normal and part of the sacred dance of the soul. This is what they do. They move. They feel. They slip. And eventually the storms you used to fear become weather you walk through with grace. Not because it doesn't hurt, but because it doesn't own you anymore. So stay. Stay where you are. Stay with your dignity. Stay in the space of awareness. But don't stay as a performer. Don't stay with your heart stretched wide open to people who no longer have the eyes to see it. Stay as the observer. Stay as the quiet witness to your own rise. Stay free, because the power was never in their presence. The power was never in their approval. The power was in your ability to show up, to still show up, not to prove, not to please, but to be. Detach emotionally, stay gracefully present, and just watch what happens when your peace becomes louder than your pain. Watch who leans in when you stop reaching. Watch what returns when you no longer chase. Watch who notices when your energy is no longer cushioning their inconsistency. Watch what shifts the moment you finally decide, I will not beg to be loved, in rooms where I once forgot to love myself. Let your stillness be your boundary. Let your detachment be your clarity. Let your presence be your power. And don't say a word. The right people will hear you anyway. There is a voice louder than confrontation, a language more fluent than pleading, a force more persuasive than explanation, and that is your absence. Not your withdrawal in anger, not your disappearance as a punishment, but your graceful, silent, unapologetic absence that arrives when presence is no longer honored. Let the world see what happens when your energy is no longer a default setting. Let the silence say what words cannot, not because you are bitter, but because you are finally awake to your own value. The most powerful shift you can make is the one where you stop chasing clarity from those who repeatedly blurred your vision. Absence, when it is intentional, when it is rooted in self-respect, speaks volumes. It strips away the noise. It unearths the truth. It forces everyone to sit in the echo of what you used to give without being asked. Your attention, your affection, your reassurance, your patience. And when those things vanish, not in rage, but in resolve, they create space. Space for recognition, space for realization, space for reckoning. Most people think they'll be heard if they shout louder, but the truly powerful are heard in silence. They are heard when they stop explaining their boundaries and start enforcing them without notice. When they stop trying to be understood and simply choose to be unavailable to misunderstanding. When they no longer pour themselves into broken vessels, hoping that a little more presence might hold things together. It never does. But absence has a way of clarifying everything. Your absence reveals what your presence used to cover up. It uncovers the inequity. It confronts what was always there but tolerated, because your overgiving made it easier to ignore. You don't need a monologue to make your point. You don't need a scene to make your impact. You just need to step back and let the void do the talking. There's a difference between silence and indifference. One comes from power, the other from apathy. Your silence isn't cold, it's conscious. It's the quiet decision to stop exhausting yourself into relevance, to stop inserting yourself into spaces where your existence is met with convenience, not reverence. It's realizing that presence is a privilege, not a plea. You've spent enough time showing up for people who only half see you, enough time making excuses for inconsistency, enough time over-explaining your heart like it needed subtitles. You're not hard to understand, you're just rare. And rarity often goes unrecognized until it's gone. Let them sit in the space where your laughter used to live. Let them feel the absence of your check-ins. Let them notice the quiet where your loyalty once made noise. Let them search for your energy in places that don't echo with your voice. Let them scroll through memories instead of messages, wondering when you slipped away so gracefully, they didn't even notice the door close behind you. This isn't about making someone regret This is about reminding yourself that you were never meant to beg for what you were born worthy of. You were never meant to be background noise in a life you poured your soul into. You were never meant to convince someone that you're enough. The moment you do, you lose yourself in the process. So let go of the performance. Let go of the need to be validated. Let go of the impulse to make people see your value by staying louder, longer, more available. See the moment you had to say, "I'm over," you're unconditional. You were never meant to be background noise. Let go of the impulse to make people see your value by staying louder, longer, more available. You don't rise by proving, you rise by removing. Removing your energy from those who drain it. Removing your heart from places it has to beg to beat. Removing your voice from conversations that never listen, only consume. You'll be shocked by what your absence reveals. Who misses you? Who reaches? Who realizes? But more importantly, you'll be shocked by what it reveals in you. The peace that returns, the clarity that comes, the strength that surfaces when your energy is no longer diluted by desperation. Absence is not emptiness, it is refinement. It distills your worth down to its purest form. It separates those who were there for access from those who were there for connection. And it saves you from wasting years trying to change